to item number 7, I would like to see if we could have a motion to reorder the agenda so that we can go ahead and formally continue the item number 10, which has already been placed on the agenda, that it's not going to be heard and will be renoticed, but I think we need to do that formally. So would somebody like to make that motion?
I'll make a motion to move public hearing for Terrazzo at Fountain Grove number 10 to number 7 in the agenda.
Okay, do I have a second on that?
I second the motion.
Okay, so that with your votes, pretty sure we're going to vote yes on this. Okay, so it's been reordered. Would somebody like to, are we just continuing it to a date uncertain? Okay, so would someone like to make that motion?
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to continue item now 7, public hearing on mitigated negative declaration, tentative parcel map, conditional use permit, hillside development permit, zoning variance for Terrazzo at Fountain Grove to a date uncertain.
Second.
Okay, so that with that, Commissioner Duggan made that motion, Vice Chair Stanley seconded it, and your votes, and that has been moved to a date uncertain. So if there are any members of the public here to talk about the Terrazzo item, it's been continued, and you'll be notified at some point as to when. Okay, so with that, we're going to go ahead and move on to, I guess, a consent item. We don't often get those. The Skyhawk Units 9 and 10 resolution correction. And, oops. And Ms. Nicholson, are we going to hear a staff report on that? It's on the consent agenda, so.
Okay, can you hear me? So it's on consent. There's no staff presentation for this item. Essentially it's an administrative correction, but we wanted to do that in a public forum, even though it's just a correction. If you have any questions about it, though, we have staff here available for questions.
Okay. Anyone have any questions? It's just fixing it. Okay, great. So would somebody like to move that resolution?
I'll make a resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Santa Rosa approving a zoning variance to allow encroachment into the required 15-foot side yard setback for the proposed construction of 4 detached single-family residences located at 5958 Sunhawk Drive, 1589 Mystic Point Place, 1611 Greyhawk Place, 6028 Sunhawk Place, assessor's parcel numbers 153-590-002, 153-590-006, 153-590-024, 153-600-010, file number ZV15-005. Waive further reading of the text.
I'll second.
Okay, so that resolution was moved by Vice Chair Stanley, seconded by Commissioner Duggan. Any discussion? I doubt it. Okay, so your votes, please.
Sure.
And that passes with 7 ayes. And next, we're going to move on to item number 8, which is a report item on our 2016 goals.
Okay, so we have an opportunity every year to check in and take a look at what we accomplished in the previous 12 months or 18 months as this work plan, I think, entailed, and then also set goals for the next time period. And so there was a period of time where the commission didn't have an annual setting of goals for a variety of reasons. There's been a lot of deference and plenty of work involved in implementing city council goals, but it came back to the commission this last year to say, how can the commission help support those city council goals, and also establish some commission-centric goals that, acknowledging budget constraints, there's still a lot of opportunities for working together and self-educating and some potentially no-cost type of endeavors. And so last year, the Planning Commission put together this, our work plan. And that work plan period was agreed to be June 2015 to June 2016. So I think what's in your packet is that resolution that documents that work plan period and also what we hope to accomplish. And as you recall, it was kind of a partnership. We really didn't have a budget to implement these goals, so we were going to work together with staff and commissioners and do what we can to be creative and innovative and yet touch on a lot of things that the commission was interested in. So there's a number of items here. I think we did pretty good. We accomplished, I think, most all of them. So just highlighting a couple of these key goals. One is to increase educational opportunities. So for the first time in a long time, several members of the Planning Commission were able to attend an annual League of California Cities conference called the Planning Commissioners Academy. That happens every year in March, and with a very limited budget, we were, I think, able to send 3 commissioners to that. So we can talk about the opportunities for this next year. But that was a very valuable training session for commissioners. Also, we set a goal to look at low-cost self-help educational opportunities, and so we discussed the potential of doing field trips focused around topical areas of interest of the commission. We did discuss that, but there was a lot of regular work to accomplish, and so we didn't actually take any field trips, but we did identify through that field trip discussion an interest in really participating in the Roseland community meetings, which we did. What's number 3 here on this resolution is consideration, preparing the Planning Commission for consideration of that Roseland specific plan. And so I think we had commissioners in attendance at all of those community workshops, and I believe that helped quite a bit when the item finally came before the Planning Commission in terms of being prepared and not having that be a first time to hear from the public directly and also to review that plan process. And so we did accomplish that, being very creative about how we would all access the opportunity to go to those meetings. So I think we did accomplish that. Number 4 here, improve communication between boards and commission. We probably have a lot more work to do, but good news is we do have an opportunity this year. I have some ideas to share with you about how we can have some joint sessions, focused joint sessions with particularly the Design Review Board on some common topics that both board and commission share. And then lastly, an administrative update. It was requested by the commission that there'd be regular advance notice as feasible of future meetings and what might be on those agendas. And so I think I've been providing that for you. So I think we've been able to accomplish that. And what else? Returning to 2 meetings per month and supporting that. I know it takes a lot of your time to come twice a month. It's a big difference from what we were doing during the recessive years, which was only once per month. And also takes a lot of staff time to return to 2 meetings per month. So a couple things have happened. One, items have increased that warrant those additional agendas, but also the department's philosophy is if a project is ready, we don't want administrative conservatism to not get it to its hearing. So if we have an opportunity to meet twice a month, we're going to hold an item once it's ready. So on occasion, you may only have an item or 2 on an agenda, but if that item is ready, it's staff's philosophy through our process improvements and sort of reorganization of our department that we want to hold those agendas and get those items heard and not have them wait a month because it's not a 6-item agenda. So I think we've accomplished that. So that's kind of an overview of what these goals are. This is your work plan, and I'm here really to answer questions and help guide you in developing your next year's plan.
I have a question. Where are we on updating the Planning Commission rules and regulations, and how much of that were we going to take responsibility for?
Well, I'm looking at Sandy. We have a draft, but I don't think we ever got it to an agenda. So we actually have we have the current version. We can get that to you, and then also some proposed amendments that staff has found has been inconsistent with other maybe city protocols or policies. And so we just need to schedule that item and bring it for your consideration. And how is the commission involved with that? You would adopt those rules and regulations at a meeting.
Okay.
So that one should probably carry over.
It's almost ready, okay. And then maybe you could share with us some of your ideas that you have about joint, or about particular joint meetings.
Okay, so for joint meetings, the opportunity that I see is we are in the process of hiring a consultant to pursue the planning process improvements, and that's the one that is permit streamlining, but also the hillside development design review policy reform. So part of the scope of that work will be a public engagement piece, but even as part of that, a board and commission engagement piece. So I envision, as part of that process, for design review reform in terms of structure. So one common issue that I hear from the board and the commission is site plan, that overlapping issue of site planning. So there could be a joint session through just that process. We could pull out specific topics to add to that. But that's one that comes to mind. And then same with hillside development permit. Have a joint session surrounding that topic, because then we're fulfilling this project in the scope of service, but we're also answering some questions that both the board and the commission have had, and also getting some sort of framework for how to move forward and what kind of amendments are we looking at. The other thing with the hillside that I found very helpful is taking a tour of hillside lots. And I know Chair Cisco had the opportunity to do that, and I'd like to offer that opportunity to all the commissioners and all the design review board members. So I think part of that hillside reform projects should include a joint field trip type of opportunity for you.
Okay, great. Any other questions of Claire right now before we take up our discussion? Commissioner Groninger.
Yes, because I was going to suggest something. When you alluded to I think it was the site plans or overlapping, you're talking about these kind of conceptually developed proposals that we've had, one of which, at least perhaps in my parlance, was one we had last week. Is that what you're talking about as part of a joint session? Because I'd like to see, maybe it comes later, but a study session on how these things work and the rationales behind them and whatever the plus and minuses are of doing that.
I think that the source of this has come from the frustration and the tension. Particularly, we've gotten a lot of the conditional use permit, land use approvals coming through us. Mostly it's been happening with our drive-through items. Those are the ones that I'm recalling where it's been frustrating. Certainly the last one, I don't even know what to say about that, but that's where the tension is that it's being, rather than it going through design review and them having an opportunity to give us their guidelines before we lock the sightline in place, we're locking a sightline in place potentially, then they don't have very much more to do other than paint colors. And it's been a source of tension. I know it's a source of frustration for me and others on here that it's like, well, what are we doing here without that advice, and how is there a better way to handle these things? So I think that's really where the source of the idea came from, that it might be good to have a discussion with design review about how to best handle this. Again, there may be some language that where we're not really, if we're approving a conditional use permit, we're not necessarily locking in the exact site plan. There may be some legal maneuvering, but it's definitely a discussion that I would like us to have, because it's just been a source of frustration and tension. And I hear that from the design review too. When they get it, it's like, well, what do you need us for? So that's really what that's about.
So could that be a joint study session?
Well, I think that's what we're talking about, is what would be some of the topics that would make that kind of meeting worthwhile in having those kinds of discussions.
And Chair Sisko, if I might add also, I think it goes the other direction as the liaison to the Design Review Board. I think sometimes the decision that the Planning Commission makes is better informed when a project first goes to the Design Review Board for some design input. So, and I know the board would appreciate having your feedback on that as well.
Okay. So, yeah. So in terms of our discussion, I think there's a number of items to carry over, and there may be, as we discuss this, there might be some other proposals by commissioners. But I think we could also get some feedback on potential joint study session topics and potential field trip educational topics, and fill in that particular piece. So, Commissioner Duggan, you want to say something?
Sure. Yeah, I really like the idea of doing a joint tour of like hillside properties and seeing sort of the impact of maybe our current hillside ordinance and maybe any proposed changes to that and how that might impact the built environment. I know many years ago, I think it was people from the Cultural Heritage Board, the Design Review Board, and Planning Commission. We went to San Francisco and did a walking tour that was sort of led by Catherine Anderson, who's an architect on Design Review, and looked at a bunch of building types and different things in San Francisco. And I think maybe if we could collaborate with someone on Design Review who might want to do something similar in Santa Rosa to show us different things that they feel are successful or not successful for whatever reason, that might be informative as well, for like commercial buildings and sort of mini mall type projects. And then I also like the idea of carrying over the item on education, because that's one of the recipients who got to go to the Planning Academy. That was really very well worth our time. And I'd like to see us continue doing that, sending people there.
Well, why don't we keep along that thread? Any other ideas on that, Commissioner Crocker? Just with this piece, I'm just trying to keep it somewhat efficient.
No, I'm just very pleased about the study session for the planning process, as you all know.
Yes.
So I'm very happy to hear that, and we can expand on that later. But that was my big number one on here, so thank you.
Okay. Anything, Commissioner Dipple? Nothing? Vice Chair Stanley?
Well, I agree with Commissioner Duggan about the education. That was, if we can't all go next year, then I think most definitely the ones that didn't get to go this year should go next year, because it was, is it this year? Is it now this year now?
No. It'll be in March of next year.
Yeah, it'll be in March, okay.
Yeah, it's annually in March. And just a note on that, which is an important note, I neglected to mention, but the department did ask the city council to allocate additional money so that the entirety of the commission could attend. And I believe we have been allocated enough money to send all the planning commission to the league's conference this year. So I'll be looking into that and confirming that for you, but I'm pretty sure that we can send everybody that wants to go this year. And it is in March. It's
Great.
in, I think, LA this year.
Yeah.
Or this next year.
So obviously the education piece is important for all of us. The tours are great too, if we could find, I also did the hillside tour with Chair Sisko. I found it an eye-opener, and I do this stuff every day, and it was an eye-opener to me of how our policies sometimes circumvent what we're really trying to do. The underlying letter of it gets circumvented by the policy, and that's just because policy ends up being so prescriptive at times that it actually stops flexibility and creativity that can come in hillside design and development. So a joint DRB Planning Commission meeting, I think, to discuss that would be great, and I think DRB should go on the hillside tour as well. We had one DRB member, vice chair. Are we talking about just what's on here in terms of
No,
education? Or,
you might as well go
there's
for it.
things that I
Yeah.
sort of sit on my mind, and I
Okay.
just wanted to see if, to throw them out there.
I just thought we'd follow one thread, but not necessary.
Am I breaking the
No, it's
protocol?
fine.
Your organized, orderly way, and
Whatever.
here I go again.
It's okay.
I would like to explore as a commission and with staff how we can become a better part of this process improvement plan, because I have my own ideas. I don't know whether they'll stick or not, but I have ideas about that. Certainly it's a direction from council. And I think the Planning Commission, as a planning commission, long-range planning, is an important body that needs to be part of that process to help move development through, good development through, potentially stop bad development before it spends 2 years going through a process and spending a lot of money. But certainly in a process improvement, I think the Planning Commission, from a concept review stage, I know other jurisdictions do it. I'd like to see us explore that. This is maybe a question for staff, but the general plan update's coming. I know it's coming in 2018, not 2017, but to what degree the commission should start educating themselves, understanding some of those areas, and maybe having some feedback and conversation with staff and recommendations to council prior to that general plan update, because what will happen is a RFP will go out for a consultant, and it'll have a pretty strong list of what we want out of that consultant, and I think the commission should weigh in on that. My personal feeling. Yeah, and the joint study sessions, one of the things that the tensions that I see with Design Review and Planning Commission is that when sort of the CEQA analysis side gets taken out of the Planning Commission's hands and put into the Design Review Board, which, you know, from the Design Review Board members I talk with, that's not their core. It's not why they got on Design Review Board. They wanted to look at design issues, and here they are looking at land use and, you know, traffic studies and noise studies. And I think that the people who are on this body got on this body for that very reason. And I don't know if it's potential that areas like that, there could be a joint meeting so that we're not prolonging an applicant's time through the system, but maybe we could hit it in one meeting, or at least within a couple weeks of each other. I know you go to DRB and the meeting minutes don't get posted for a while, or they don't get officially approved, and so we don't, when it goes to design review and 2 weeks later your planning commission, we don't have those notes and we don't have the recommendations necessarily. We have staff report, but I'd like to explore options for how we could actually have the input into those discussions that I think are better placed with this body. That's all I got.
Commissioner Gronica?
Other than what I stated just a brief while ago, really, I would just endorse, I think, everything that's been mentioned before, but then come back and reiterate. And I don't know if it becomes a subject for a joint discussion or whatever with Design Review Board, but I was struck by when did the review work for the draft EIR for the annexation. I saw potential possibilities, perhaps problems of finding ourselves in the same sort of issue concern in at least certain areas that are environmental issues that potentially could be impacted by a desire to move forward and as quick as possible on some projects, especially any that relate to housing. And so this statement's more just to underscore, I think, the importance of getting an understanding of how these processes work. And I think I need a lot of convincing that before I feel comfortable with what we're doing as it relates to these projects that have kind of limited land use plans or whatever, and almost taking a too quick a look at the EIR portion of those two. So.
Commissioner Edmondson?
On the subject of educational opportunities, it has special, I think, value for me because I'm the one who needs the most education out of the people up here. So all of these avenues are fantastic, and I'm encouraged by what my fellow commissioners have said about the value in these things in the past. To the extent that it wouldn't be too burdensome, I would appreciate maybe the opportunity for educational materials that are written that could maybe be sent to us via email or made available to us in some other way. That could include just good, concise explanations of different areas. You know, it's a very broad set of things that we deal with up here, so it could be a lot of different things. It could address some of the legal issues that might be particularly interesting to me, and then also any kind of developments that are happening in the area, whether they're legislative developments. I know that we are kept up to date by all of you in the course of these meetings, but you know, anything that comes across staff's desk that you all find useful in doing your jobs, I think would be worth at least maybe sharing with us from time to time for us to look over and understand maybe the perspectives that you guys are developing and why you make the decisions that you do, and also just give us the chance to evaluate these things ourselves. But other than that, I don't have too much to add to what my fellow commissioners have said.
Commissioner Crocker?
I wonder, it's a bit of a question, but back to my planning process issue again. My understanding is it's more of a policy change. So are we talking to design review about a policy change? Or I'm always seeing that if we're doing general plan amendments and rezones and major entitlements, that we should be looking at the whole of the project, and it should include the design review stop first. But as the policy or unwritten policy currently exists, they can come to us first and then go to design review after, and that's when we get all that deferred mitigation. So I don't know where the policy lies, but I want to get at, I'm not sure if just talking to design review, are we talking about changing the policy at the city or unwritten as it may be? I've never actually seen this policy, but I'm told that it exists.
Well, the opportunity that I was expressing is very specific. It's a policy project initiated by the city council. So unfortunately, with limited budgets, we don't have the opportunity to just initiate policy reforms because staff or boards and commissions would like to do that. We're focused on what the council will allow through initiation. So the current opportunity that's created by that council direction is to look at hillside development permit and design review process to look for areas to make it better and more predictable for our customers and for our public. And so that's the opportunity that I presented that dovetails with your goals is simply that, is taking something that we're already going to be working on and using that as a talking piece to connect the two boards. So that's the focus of that. So not completely open-ended to start initiating policy reform on CEQA or other avenues, is we don't have direction from City Council to take on additional work. And we're struggling as it is to do what's on our plate. Our department has many of those work plans.
Well, is it a policy reform? Can somebody show me the policy? Because I am told that this is how it works, but I do not see a policy. So I don't even know if it's a policy reform.
Okay, so your question is about, well, maybe I should just ask you to restate it and then see if it's something that we can provide clarity on whether it's policy or practice or what it is. But if you can clarify for us what we would be reporting back on.
Well, in particular, say when you are looking at a rezone or a general plan amendment, that we continually having the problem where the project comes here first before it goes to design review, and the CEQA document is looking at an undefined project, and we are asked to approve a new land use designation for an undefined project. And my understanding is it was because they wanted to save money and be able to, you know, make sure that they're going to get the most important entitlement before they put in the money and work to show me what the project is. So it's kind of what we're all dancing around up here, but I'm just getting at, if we're just going to sit around and talk to design review, that's great, but what is the policy that allows them to bypass essentially the planning commission and go straight to design review and have them look at the CEQA document and have them make the decisions?
So
Is
I
that
think that's
too long of a question?
No, I perfectly understand that. I think that's a topical question that can be one of your educational opportunities. Maybe that's one of those study sessions where we bring back what is the policy regarding that topic. And I
Is
think
there a
that's-
policy? Because like you've given us a memo before, but I still didn't see the policy. So is there an official policy?
No, I think there's an indirect consequence from existing policy that allows a project to move forward in a certain way. So I think we can bring back what the policies are that have the implication of that fact that if the only planning entitlement is with design review, then, and that's a discretionary action, then that's going to be subject to the California Environmental Quality Act, and there will be a resolution in support of those findings. And there is no policy that brings that environmental back to the Planning Commission. But again, we're getting into the weeds on a specific educational topic, and that's all we can offer at this point is educational sessions, not to initiate policy reform.
Okay.
So that's what we can offer. We're going to add that to the topics of interest.
I would be interested in that policy report because I think that would answer a lot of the questions that we've heard up here, and then we could decide where to go from there. So I would like to add that. Thank you.
I second.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, the piece that you were introducing, that there would be a boards and commissions piece to the the planning process improvements, that's specific to the hillside option and specific to the design review.
Right, we have
Review.
two opportunities for policy reform that I was just thinking of that I was sharing, and that is we are undergoing a policy reform project on design review, and we are undergoing a policy reform project on hillside development. We're actually undergoing a lot of other policy developments that will end up with the Planning Commission in some shape or form, and that is around the medical cannabis. Eventually, we'll be moving forward with a comprehensive policy, and if it affects the zoning code, it will be before you. So there are opportunities for the commission to weigh in on policy decisions, but I was just trying to think of those opportunities that coincide with this interest to do joint sessions. That's all it was.
So I guess, what I'm hearing from other commissioners, certainly a concern of mine, if design review is undergoing, a review of how they process things, and a lot of the policies may change with regard to how they process applicants, is that an opportunity for us to insert that what needs to be looked at is, when the zoning code was amended a number of years ago, when we did our update, that's when we made a lot more projects happen by right. That's where they started taking on more of CEQA by these by right projects. And there's been a lot of outcry over the years that commissioners have felt uncomfortable about that. I can think of a number, I can't think of the name of the grocery store proposal, or it was a general plan amendment proposal, but that was a concern, is we don't like turning that over to design review. And so we don't like having turned it over to design review, but it was done for an efficiency reason. Is that going to be looked at? Is the efficiency piece as good as maybe the productivity piece? If we're unhappy that we're not reviewing those documents, and design review is unhappy that they are reviewing those documents. I mean, in other words, is that a place to insert at least the question to be looked at as the consultants are going through this revamping of design review? And I realize it would lead to a policy change, but I mean, if they're going to be looking at how to change over what they do potentially and making some policy, is that a place to at least insert this question that we have?
I think possibly. There's objectives established for the policy project. And
Okay.
I can tell you with great certainty that those objectives are to serve our customers and our public members first and foremost. Not to make it easier on us or more comfortable in terms of staff or the planning commission or the design review board.
No, I get that. That was efficiency.
But the emphasis, and not just efficiency, but does it make for an improved, predictable, does it touch all those points, time, certainty, and costs that affect our customers that are inhibiting housing for the city? So that's the impetus for that project. So so long as it dovetails with that, I don't see why not. We don't have any foregone conclusion what the changes will be, but I think that's the framework that we have to work for. It's for our customers, which includes our applicants and our public, and accepting housing for the city and moving it forward. So I think, yeah, it could be part of the discussion, but that's.
Yeah, I'm just looking for ways to
project.
insert the question in the framework that's proposed. I mean, I get the constraints, but I'm just kind of wondering where we might point some of these questions and, experiences of tension that we've had. And
I think it's a topic, whether it's part of that design review project or just an additional opportunity to have a joint discussion with the design review board about how it can work better.
okay.
I think certainly we can add that to your work plan to understand why the experience is the way it is, and learning more about that, and then I think going from there.
And that's part of what we had. We're clarifying what each board and commission is actually responsible for, and that might just help, like it or not, to really end the argument when we're unhappy that we don't get to do something that we don't get to do. So, yeah, and I just want to finish, and then I'll let you go. So I'm definitely in favor of what we've been looking at here in terms of study session topics. As far as the educational field trips, definitely I think it was so valuable to go on that hillside tour. I think that particularly with this piece that's being looked at, that would be a great educational field trip for commissioners. And then as far as a San Francisco trip, I was able to go on that trip too, and it was really, really valuable, but I have a feeling it was really expensive to the city to put together. And when I originally was proposing that we do educational field trips, I was thinking more local, thinking things like I had the benefit of taking a field trip with Chuck Regalia and Marie Meredith to see how different densities in the city actually look on the ground. So I was thinking more in terms of that. And one of the things that I'm thinking about now is maybe a field trip to get really, really familiar with our station area plans. particularly the downtown station area plan, if we're going to start, having the reunification of Courthouse Square, we're going to start to get more things there, and maybe it would be useful to do a local field trip to really see what does the plan say, what's going to happen on the ground.
If I could clarify, yeah, I did intend local. I was using the San Francisco
Oh,
as an
I see.
example,
Okay, I
but
thought you were-
I meant doing the same thing, but here.
But here, okay, yeah, that's the main thing, is just to keep it local and less expensive. So, but ideas like that, like, well, what do we want to know about? Do we want to know more about the plans? Do we want to know more about how density leads? What kinds of things do we want to know about that are already here in Santa Rosa for field trip education? So, yeah, and so Commissioner Groniger, you had a question?
Yeah, it's probably trying to clarify something that I'm unclear about. And getting back to this matter of these, I call them conceptual developments. I think that term was used in one of the projects. But as we've been talking, it sounded like it started, whether it's a joint study session or whatever, it started to narrow to hillside permits, whereas I think we're talking about a wider range of potential projects. And I would like to see a study session either based on an existing policy and/or process, if the policy's not there in place yet, whatever, however Claire said it evolved, I guess. So we understand, or at least myself, but I think a good many of us understand why we're doing what we're doing or not doing in some cases, in terms of how these things move to us, parts of them do or not. Why does design review do this part? Why does planning commission do this part? I appreciate the whole discussion about efficiency, but I think I've been on the commission a little over 3, maybe 4 years now, and I think this commission has demonstrated its ability to handle full range and some rather in-depth projects, issues, proposals, whatever you may want to call them. And I think I believe, sitting with probably the best set of commissioners in my short time here that really are actively involved and really want to understand and still do the best for the city. And I think that's at the base of what we're talking about here. So,
Chair Sisko, if I may, as I'm sitting here and listening to this, I think what I'm hearing is a strong interest on the commission, and perhaps this can be inserted into the work plan, is a desire to evaluate either the policy or practice of particularly general plan amendments without projects, and is that the best way to go forward? And then, because it was on a recent agenda, perhaps projects that are more conceptual in nature and the evaluation of those. So if that's correct, we can certainly add that to this work plan, and we can bring that forward as a study session, that specific topic.
So we would be getting education as to how that has evolved, how that works, what our piece is in it. We won't be deciding any changes in that. We're just getting more information about how that works.
Correct.
Okay, I think that would be helpful.
I think the first step in any of these things is to get more information, clarification about maybe some background on why those items are coming forward, and then we can go from there. We can once we have an opportunity to discuss it, especially abstractly without it being attached to a specific applicant project that's right before you that night. I think that's the point, and that's a great example of a commission-only session that we would do here. But I'm keeping track of which ones seem to be that joint type of session versus the commission session. But yeah, I think the first thing is just getting on board outside of specific applicant project. How does this stuff work, and be able to talk about it, and then going from there, not a foregone conclusion that there's any impetus to change policy. First, we have to understand what it is. You know, why is it happening in that way?
I think we need to be really clear and have very focused agendas for joint meetings that are really difficult to manage. It's hard enough to manage 7 people, much less 14. So I think that when we're identifying, you know, as you come forward maybe with proposed joint study session topics, that we're all clear that it's very focused and kind of what the parameters would be for that discussion. Vice Chair Stanley.
Just a point of clarification. I don't think anybody up here, it feels to me like there's some apprehension because staff thinks that we want to start changing policy. But I would go back to what I said initially, is that I'm looking for process improvement. Everybody up here wants to move projects through, and I don't think there's anybody up here who is, I've been on here over 5 years. I can't remember a housing project that was stopped at the commission because of, you know, that we just had some process that we wanted to drag some applicant through. So what we're looking for is an efficiency in which the way the projects do move through the system so that they're hitting the milestones in the right place at the right time and we're moving them. Commissioner Crocker wasn't necessarily talking about projects that were by rights that were moving. She was talking about projects that are coming to us with no project, and we're doing this analysis, and there's nothing to analyze. That's frustrating for us. I mean, we felt it a few weeks ago, and for us, it's a matter of looking at land use policy and understanding it and moving that through, because that's where we're supposed to be looking. And when we're not allowed to do that, it's just frustrating. So we're not saying, let's make this longer, let's drag the applicant through a process. We're saying, let's reorder it. Not policy, reorder it so that it makes sense. Applicants could move. I could think of several projects, specific, which I won't say, that I think we could have, if we had had a chance to look at those earlier, I think that we could have helped the process. We're not here to stop things. We're here to make sure that the process, we're told over and over again, the general plan is our Bible and we need to follow that, but there's also flexibility in that system. And as great as staff is, there's another set of eyes and education and experience up here that I think could feed into that system very well and actually make things move more efficiently, which is what the process improvement plan is supposed to be about.
And all those points are well taken. I think I understand that clearly. I think what we're trying to do right now is separate out and efficiently figure out when and where and how we evaluate those things, since it's the work plan item before you write immediately. And as Claire said, I think like the conceptual projects coming forward, that's probably a planning commission only study session where the process improvements are related specifically to design review and hillside reform.
So as far as how the work plan is written, you know, we do it in general terms. Here's, you know, increased educational opportunities, and then there's subsets. Is that what we will be getting back is generally we could be explore this, explore that with a joint study session, explore this with a planning commission study session so that it's kind of clear for us what part we should be looking at. I mean, you're getting enough information from us, like what the subsets
I would
should
say,
be.
personally, it's more than just general. There's some clear topics that I think we can add to this work
Okay.
plan, bring back and have a focused discussion, because
Okay.
it's obviously important to the commission.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and I can read back some of the things that, the process is, you know, we have last year's as it's not even a template you're bound to, but just to help move discussion. But what we'll do is from your discussion tonight, prepare a resolution to bring back for your consideration. There'll still be time to look at it, and if you need more time, we'll bring it back at a future meeting. But the idea is to try to document what you're saying and then incorporate it into some next version of a resolution and bring it back to you. So I think at the end, maybe we can go over some of the things that were specific that are definitely new that we want to do, make a change here.
Okay. Commissioner Dipple?
This is more of an observation than anything, but just out of respect and courtesy for applicants' times, and I don't know how the scheduling, how these get put numbered on the thing. When we do something that's kind of in-house like this, that really nobody's going to be involved with except for us, is there any way to put that at the end of the meeting so applicants that have issues or need something to be, because I think like number 9 right now, they could have probably been out of here an hour ago. So I just made that observation that I think if we're going to do in-house stuff that really only concerns us, that we put that at the end of the meeting. So that way we don't hold up anybody to get in their way. It's just an observation.
It was a deliberate ordering of the agenda, and just to explain how the agendas have a certain structure, we have a set of protocols. We can talk about changing that or adding more flexibility in that when we amend our rules and regulations, but generally speaking, consent goes first, report items, and then public hearings. So we were just working off of our existing rules.
Okay. Anything else we want to add? Okay.
Okay, so
Now you
just,
get to tell us back what we said.
Okay. Well, for the most part, we're just going to update the time frame. So we didn't talk about that time frame, but I suppose it will be a 12-month period, work plan period, unless you tell me otherwise. I think in terms of number 2, I think we've kind of developed a conference program. So, and I heard a lot of support for going to, well, we didn't talk about it, but we do a December annual training at the Sonoma State. So that's been always very popular. And in addition, seems to be a lot of support for that League of California Cities Planning Academy. So we can just say participate in this conference program as a goal. We talked about field trips, so that'll stay. Study session topics, I think you've taken a little step further, so we can add this. Commission-specific topics that I heard, and maybe it's a study session or a field trip, we can blend those two perhaps, but I heard interest in, for topics, looking at the issue of general plan amendments without a project, or conceptual or just use permits without a development project, just issues around that. And then also, I think, and then, let's see, that's just commission specific. And then for number 3, Roseland area project, I think we've accomplished that.
Yeah.
So I was going to take that out,
Yeah.
if it's okay with the commission. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, we need to, there was a new idea from Commissioner Edmondson about written materials, so educational materials, as staff gets those and thinks they're relevant or of interest of the commission, to get that out to the commission. That's a great idea. We'll add that. And then number 4, improve communication. There's a number of things that are new and or more specific in terms of looking at opportunities for understanding the varying roles and responsibilities, and also joint sessions. So we talked about the making most of the opportunity with the hillside development permit and design review projects, joint discussion about CEQA, roles and responsibilities, how that structure currently works, probably talking about opportunities and constraints with that. And then also site planning for projects where they're going to both the Design Review Board and Planning Commission, and basically both the board and the commission are looking at the site plan. So talking about how that should work better. I think I got that. And then administrative update, we still need to bring back the rules and regulations. And I think that I catch it. Yeah, so in terms of the educational materials, we'll include the legislative updates that we received. Did I capture everything?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if not,
If
you have
not,
another
we'll
opportunity.
do it again.
Yeah. Sometimes
Right.
you have to see it.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, great, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay. So with that, we will finally move on to item number 9, which is a public hearing for the rezoning of 372 Yolanda Avenue. It is not marked as an ex parte. And Monet Sheikh Ali. You're going to have to say your last name. I think I might have just killed it. Is staff, and she'll be giving the staff report.
Good evening, Chair Cisco and members of the Planning Commission. The item before you today is JK Industrial Building Rezoning. The project is to rezone a single parcel from general commercial to light industrial for consistency with the light industry general plan land use designation. The site is located at 372 Yolanda Avenue in southeast Santa Rosa. The subject site, which is outlined in red here, it consists of approximately 0.86 acres of land, and it contains a single-family residence on north side of the site facing Yolanda Avenue, and it was constructed in 1948. The surrounding area is mostly developed with light industrial uses, such that on the north we have an industrial truck terminal. On the east there is a single residential and light manufacturing. On the south we have multifamily residential and another light industrial on the west. This is the diagram showing current general plan land uses. The subject site, which is outlined in blue here, it is within light industrial general plan land designation, and this designation is described as being a land use category appropriate for industrial uses, such as light manufacturing, warehousing, automotive repair, home improvement, and landscape material retail, and other large-scale space needs. This is the combined general plan and zoning map that shows the current zoning classification for the subject site, and it is general commercial, which is not consistent with the general plan land use designation, and the applicant is requesting to rezone it to light industrial to be consistent with the general plan. A short history of the project. On December 16, 2014, the applicant submitted a minor design review to construct a new manufacturing metal building behind the existing single-family residence, an application to rezone the property from general commercial to light industrial. And on January 15, 2015, an issue letter was sent out to the applicant requesting to revise plans. And it was later determined that a minor conditional use permit also will be required for the existing single family to be retained as a caretaker unit. The applicant submitted the application for minor conditional use permit on April 6, 2016, and on May 19, 2016, the zoning administrator approved the minor design review and minor conditional use permits, subject to approval of the rezoning of the property. The project complies with the California Environmental Quality Act, Section 21083.3, and Guidelines Section 15183, in that it is consistent with the City of Santa Rosa General Plan and complies with the zoning code requirements. Staff has received one comment in favor of the project, and staff did not identify any issues in reviewing the rezoning application. With that, the Department of Planning and Economic Development recommends that the Planning Commission recommends by resolution that the council approve the rezoning of the property located at 372 Yolanda Avenue from general commercial to light industrial for consistency with the light industry general plan land use designation. And I'm available to answer your questions. I know the applicant representative and the property owner are available to answer questions as well.
Great, thanks. Any questions of staff? No? Okay, great, thank you. And does the applicant want to make a presentation?
Good evening, Commissioners. Paul Larson with Cadello and Larson Architectural Designs. And I don't know how I feel about following that last item, but we're here hopefully in the right order. We've been working with planning for about a little over a year on the project. It is, again, an infill project sitting between two IL zone properties. We've gotten support through planning, have revisited them several times with revisions that they have asked for with the project, and basically are looking to the commission to support the rezoning of the project. I can go through, if you would like, a presentation of the overall design process of the design of the configuration of the site and such.
Is that something commissioners want? I mean, our purview is really the
Land use.
rezoning. We don't need it.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, no, that's fine. If there's questions on that, if there's any questions on particular design features, anything that way, we are here happy to answer any questions you might have that way. Otherwise, we're just asking that the commission support the rezoning for the land use. And again, myself and Jeff Konoff, the owner, are both here to answer any questions you might have.
Okay. Vice
Thank
Chair
you.
Stanley actually does have a question for you.
So,
Yes.
just one question, Paul. I'm assuming that, you're meeting all the land use requirements to this, but is there a noise issue, or did you look at that as a noise issue for this abutting residential?
There was a
property to the
condition
south?
on it, and in those conditions, in the conditions of approval, there were considerations for the hours of operation, for the decibel levels that would be restricted, and that all of the storage be kept inside. The hours of delivery and such are also managed by the use permit. So that the noise consideration is there. They didn't require anything for a sound wall or anything that way. We did set the building back, provided additional landscaping between the residential use and the commercial use. And again, I think most of it is tied in and really controlled by the hours of operation.
Sure. All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Duggan and then Commissioner Crocker.
Yeah, I just have a question about yard lights towards the neighborhood to the south. I think there was an issue like maybe almost 10 years ago with another property along here next to the residential use where, because there was a slight elevation change between the two properties, that the light industrial property was higher in elevation. So the neighborhood got more like sound and light carryover, and I'm just wondering if you've addressed that.
Yeah, again, I think that is mostly addressed by the increased landscaping. We put quite a few trees between there's a 20-foot buffer between the rear of the building and the rear setback line. There's a little bit of elevation change, about 4 feet between our pad and the back of the apartment project behind us. So we are aware of that. The lights have been recessed into the soffit. All of them are kept off of the back of the building. We have no lights on the back of the building at all. So we are aware of it and have worked to make sure that that's not impacting the neighbors. Thank you.
Commissioner Crocker.
Yeah, in the staff report, it was talking about that this rezoning is to be consistent with the general plan. I just was wondering, for this storage warehouse, I know there are some storage uses that are allowed in general commercial. Maybe those were mostly accessory. Would this storage warehouse be an allowed use in the general commercial as well?
I'd have to
Like,
defer
what is
that to planning. I don't believe it was, though.
Mini storage are allowed in general commercial, not the contractor storage.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions of the applicant? Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. So this is a public hearing. I'll go ahead and open the public hearing. If any members of the public would like to come down and address the commission on this item. Don't have any cards, and I am not seeing anyone move. So I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission. Any other questions before we proceed? Okay. So would someone like to move a resolution for the purposes of discussion?
I'll make a resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Santa Rosa recommending to City Council rezoning of property located at 372 Yolanda Avenue to the Light Industrial IL District, assessors parcel number 044-072-010, file number REZ14-015. Waive for the reading of the text.
I'll second.
Okay, so that was moved by Vice Chair Stanley, seconded by Commissioner Duggan. Vice Chair Stanley, any discussion?
Well, this is pretty simple. And I apologize that you had to wait through all of this, but we have process that we need maybe to improve. This to me is a classic example of getting zoning in line with the general plan. Yolanda is clearly an industrial area. Other than the housing to the south, everything along that street is pretty industrial, and there's no sidewalks, so you don't want people in there. It's really a way for trucks to get in and out. So I think this is absolutely appropriate rezone of the property, and it cleans up our zoning and general plan, so I'll be approving this.
Commissioner Groninger?
Really don't have any further questions. It's straightforward and simple to understand, which I like. The one thought would be this, that it would be nice, I didn't find it in the materials, but there was a minor use permit issued. It'd be nice to have a copy of that as part of our packet in the future, is all I'm saying, so we know what the conditions were, so on. But straightforward project, deserves to be built.
Commissioner Edmondson?
I think the rezoning makes perfect sense, and it's obviously going to be consistent with the area, and so I'm completely in favor of it. I should have mentioned this earlier. I just heard in staff presentation that there was a comment approving or that was in approval of the project from the public. I don't know whether that was by telephone or written or anything, but I don't think I ever saw a copy of it if it was written or had any kind of summary presented to us.
It was by telephone.
Okay, so, and was that today or a late comment?
It was this week. It happened this week. After I prepared the staff report, actually, they just called and they were in favor of this rezoning.
Okay. All right, yeah, just would be helpful, I think, to know about that maybe ahead of time, but really, for a project like this, I don't think it's a huge issue at all, but in any case, I completely support the project. I'll be voting for it.
Okay, Commissioner Duggan?
Yeah, I think the rezoning is to be consistent with the general plan. Land use designation is fine, and I'm supportive.
Commissioner Crocker?
I will be supporting this project.
Commissioner Dipple?
I'm just glad it's a rezoning issue, not a general plan amendment. So I will be supporting it.
And I also am in support of it. It's a cleanup issue and consistency issue. It's just different than a changing issue. So, okay, so with that, the resolution was moved by Vice Chair Stanley, seconded by Commissioner Duggan. Your votes, please. And that passes with 7 ayes. And I believe that's our only resolution. So with that, we concluded this item in our meeting tonight. So thank you. And we'll adjourn to our August meeting, August 11th, I believe. Thank you.
Minivan and sent 2 people to the hospital. Guess she was paying more attention to that thing than the road.
Making sure my wife picks up my suit.
Sounds like a text message that just couldn't wait.
Texting and driving. A killer combination.
Santa Rosa,
out there in the middle of everything.